Companies are just not marketing. If you do not have a roadmap, if you do not have a game plan, whether offshore or at home, it's gonna fail. If you don't run ads, if you don't have Google LSAs, who's gonna be contacting your business? We're hard on problems. We're not afraid to use AI. We want everyone to win.
Today, we are here with Abdel Cowo. Abdel and I have a pretty crazy history of working together. He's going to be a great guest for the Growth Code. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit about your past, Abdel, and understanding and explaining to our audience, what it's like working with a virtual assistant or offshore person, and explain some of the problems we've tackled together, and hopefully people listening to this, if you're ever thinking about hiring somebody from offshore, you might get a little bit of a feel for, what somebody that you maybe would hire might be like, with Abdel, who was one of my first virtual assistants in my own law firm. So, sit back and listen to Abdel's story and see if this is someone you might want to bring into your own business. So, Abdel, just briefly, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, a little bit about what you like to do on any given day, and, what was life like before working with us?
Okay, so I am originally from Santa Elena, which is one of the twin towns of San Ignacio, Santa Elena.
In
I was
Belize.
born in yeah, this is in Belize, and I was born and raised here. I've always worked locally. Even when I started my first virtual job, it was still from this location, and I like to do outdoors type stuff. So when I think about hiking, fishing, smoking meat, like cooking, barbecue, but low and slow. I like building stuff. I building anything, building procedures, building like furniture, building processes. Just building is something that I enjoy doing. Like I can throw together a CapCut video, a Canva flyer, just because when I build, I feel very much accomplished. Likewise with the BPO sector, with attorney assistant, like building an office from scratch, it gives you a sense of accomplishment to look back and be like, hey, I was a part of that.
Sure. So let's tell our audience a little bit about what we're working on. So, just to give a little background, Abdel runs our Belize office space, which is in San Ignacio City, right along the border of Guatemala. We strategically selected Belize because the people there are just excellent, culture-driven, value-driven people, and English is the first language of Belize. And along the Guatemala border, there are a lot of Spanish speakers. From a cost of living perspective, it's still in the realm of reasonable for North America, and it's actually not that far. People might be surprised by how easy it is to get to Belize. So, did you ever imagine running an office in Belize the way that we're doing now before we started working together?
I did, but not on the scale that we are now. I remember when I first met you, well, not when I first met you, when you first asked me the question, hey, Abdel, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? And I said, I see myself managing an office of closers. Your next words were like, let's make it happen. And when I said that, I thought it would be an office of maybe 5, 10 really good closers. But I'm here in an office of 51 excellent people.
So, when did we start? We came down the first time in April 2023, right?
Hmm. We started scouting then, and then we started with the previous company that went for a year, but attorney assistant has been since May of 2025. So we're approaching the 1 year mark at attorney assistant Belize Limited.
But having an office in Belize we're approaching now 3 years of having an office in Belize, right?
Mm. Of having operations, yes. 3 years of operating in Belize.
Yeah. So why do you think that, people of Belize are different? And, why do you feel like, maybe the country of Belize or the people of Belize are overlooked and they really shouldn't be?
So Belize is very unique in terms of it's the only English speaking country in Central America. So Central America was once one big Spanish colony. We're the only former British colony. So we speak English. We understand, we write, we read. English is actually the official language of Belize. Now, because of our strategic position, we have Mexico to the north, Guatemala to the west, Honduras to the south. We have an influence of Spanish speakers. So we can pick up on the Spanish language, and most Belizeans are bilingual. There's a very diverse culture in Belize. We have various ethnicities. So most people are bilingual. If it's not Spanish English, it's Spanish Garifuna, Spanish Creole, Spanish. We also have like Mennonites Amish, so it's that Spanish, Dutch, German dialect. So most people in Belize speak multiple languages, and that's very unique in terms of the linguistic part of it. The next thing is Belize was very early on. We jumped into the tourism industry because of the beaches, because we know that there was a lot of natural beauty. We have Mayan temples, we have rainforests, we have beaches. The country invested in tourism. And based on that, so now first from a British colony, able to speak English, have tourists who want to come here for the beauty. So the number one industry in the country for a while was tourism, number one income earner. So people interact with foreigners. People speak English, people interact with foreigners. And this set up a very strong pillar for the next step, which is the business process outsourcing. Now, we're already used to interacting with people who are not from here. We've already been taught English from pre K all the way up to the highest level of education in the country. So it's easy for us to jump on a call and speak with someone from the US or from the UK or from Canada because we speak the same language and we have the influence of them coming here, so it's not foreign to us to speak with them.
So there's one thing I think, Belizeans are really good with people. What I find is when I was just in Belize at the beginning of January, spent a week with our team, including Abdell and other members of our team in Placencia, which is just a gorgeous beach town. If you've ever been, if you're a big scuba, it's really beautiful reefs and it's awesome. But what I notice about the people there, everybody from bartenders to servers, people have great senses of humor. They're very kind, they're very agreeable, and they don't take things very personal. They really want there's a service mentality that reminds me of, like, Thailand and the Philippines, actually. What do you think that service mentality and that, agreeableness, kind nature to Belizeans can be attributed to?
It can be attributed to many things. We're similar to the islands because we're a part of the Caribbean community. So we do have that island vibe going, even though we're mainland. And we also know that customer service is important because the tourism industry has shown us that, if you treat your customers well, they will be repeat customers. So this has been engraved over many years. So it's etched behind, if I want my business to do well, I also need to treat my customers well so that they're repeat customers. So this has a lot to attribute to it. And overall, we're just friendly people.
Yeah, I can attest to it. So I think that, a lot of what we place full-time staff in businesses, and we place a lot in law firms specifically. And there might be lawyers listening to this right now. So, for a lawyer who's dabbling with the idea of hiring offshore intake or, some sort of administrative case management position. You know, how can you show examples or explain to those listening, why do Belizeans not only have the ability to do well interacting with people, but they also can pay attention to the details and make sure the actual substance of the work is high quality too. Explain why they can be both, because working in a law firm requires both.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. We're similar to anyone who can hire stateside. Our schooling is based off the British education system. And if you look back just a generation, our parents were being educated by people from the British education system. It's very heavily. We also have the what we call church state schools. So these are mostly people from the Catholic Anglican denomination who would come to schools and educate us. So the education would be on par with what you would get in England, and now we have the new generation who were taught by them, who are not taking over, who are Belizeans, who still hold this standard. So even though we are not a developed country and we may be considered the developing country, our education system is pretty solid. We have one of our attorneys who's like the best in the Caribbean, graduated valedictorian when he went into the Caribbean to study as an attorney. We have people who are very success driven and people who are open to learning, and that is very important. If you're open to learning and you put the effort in, it will get done. You will do it. And a lot of Belizeans have this drive. Belizeans want to work. We want to be successful. And it's not for us, it's not a paycheck at the end of the month. For us is, how can I grow with this company? A lot of people have that growth mindset. I would also want to grow.
Yep. So, let's go and dig into a little bit of our past. So, what role did you start in when you joined our ecosystem? And, you know, what were you maybe nervous about? What were you surprised about in that role? What were some of your first wins? Tell me a little bit about our past.
So starting off was a bit rocky. I know when you guys tried to recruit me, I was skeptical. I'm like, I'm not working for someone who I don't even know if their business exists, or you were just starting off the law firm. It was a leap of faith, and it took me honestly 3 months to think it over before I jumped on board. So I know there was a 3-month period where I was thinking about it. And then I had the conversation with you, and you said, look, I know I'm asking you to take a leap of faith, but it will be worth your time if you do, because we have big things coming up. And I saw at that point, more than a business owner, I saw a visionary. And by seeing someone that has a long term vision, it aligned with the way I think. I don't think today, tomorrow. I think 3, 5, 10 years down, what's gonna happen? Where are we going? So that was one of the main things that like caught my attention. And so I started off at your law firm at Ethen Ostroff Law, and it was not the smoothest onboarding. I was given a bunch of files on a spreadsheet and say, hey, go read this and then come back and let me know what you've learned. There were strict instructions to not show him what to do. Let's see how he can read, interpret, and learn on his own. And that's when we were building the library. We're building the EOL library of how to do things. And there were like videos, there were scripts, there were different documents. And well, I got to understand them, execute them, and kind of did it so well that other people were on edge. And I kind of became sort of the antagonist in a way, being that,
If you were doing intake work and you were able to do it quickly.
yes, I was able to do it quickly than people who were already there. And that, you know, was a bit rocky for being able to outperform those who were there before you.
And I guess, uh, from a culture perspective, what kind of things do you think that we did to help facilitate your growth?
Well, things that were really good and I really appreciate was getting new training. I remember the first empathy training that we got, you signed us up for a course and say, okay, this is what you'll do. And I was really happy for that because when I don't know something, you'd be like, hey, book a course and we'll cover it for you so that you can improve your skills. So we did a couple Udemy courses. Even when I started over at Attorney Assistant, we did some of those B2B Udemy courses, which set the foundation for where I'm at.
Um, so, what were some of the skills that you did have to build to succeed as an intake agent in a law firm that you think, other Belizeans and offshore staff that you've worked with, maybe they came in and they had to refine it a little bit, or, what are the things that you think allowed for you to both succeed and things you had to work on when you got here?
Okay, so things that allowed me to succeed was pattern recognition. Really good at pattern recognition. So when dealing with mass torts, it's a similar pattern. So the pattern recognition, if this, then this, if not, then this, that was really helpful for me. One of the things I had to work on was just figuring out how to get that person to answer the phone. You're a complete stranger calling them. And so I started to research how to cold call. So cold calling was something and I'm still working on today. So I have not perfected it. I know that even though I've gotten better since I first started, there's still so much more for me to learn. And I learn every day. And I continuously seek out assistance or go on YouTube or read or even ask ChatGPT, hey chat, how can I do it? How can I better this cold call? So that is one of the main things I had to refine my cold call. However, I think my pattern recognition skills was what helped me just knock it out of the park when signing cases.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about culture. Okay. Let's say that a law firm in the United States is really seriously considering bringing an in-house United States intake agent or case manager versus, maybe specifically Belize. Let's just talk Belize.
Mhm.
If they truly are equally, able to do the task, why should somebody seriously consider a Belizean over an American for that seat?
Well, I'd go further in saying why they should choose someone from attorney assistant, not just a Belizean, because company wide we have a culture and we have core values. And our core values set us up for success. One of our main core values is we try our best. We do our best in every scenario that we in. Another core value is we're hard on problems and not on each other. So rather than passing the buck and saying, oh, it was your fault, we try to see how can we fix this problem? It's not the person, it's the problem. Let's fix the problem. Which leads to another of our core values. We approach things with curiosity, positivity when we want to solve our problems. So again, we're problem solving, we're identifying the problem solving, to make sure everyone is heard when we're problem solving. And one of the big things, since it's a hot topic right now, we're not afraid to use AI. We're not afraid to automate. So whereas people may be thinking AI is the lazy and the easy path to problem solve, we embrace it. We're early adapters. So attorney assistant and my colleagues at attorney assistant are early adapters that will use technology as an advantage and not be afraid like, oh, AI is coming from my job. It's like, nah, I'm gonna tame AI and use it to help me do my job. And lastly, we always want to ensure that we win, the client wins, the company wins. We want everyone to win. And so we have this mindset coming in because we have already set out what our core values are. So having our core values puts us ahead of the pack in terms of the quality of person that you're going to get.
I did not pay him for this testimonial, just being clear. Uh, you know, what we like to describe attorney assistant is we are not a staffing company. We are a high quality work and output company. And what we sell to law firms is a high quality product of work. Who does it? We make sure they're ready for it. And if we are not able to succeed in high quality output, we all lose. So our product is high quality output. How we get there is through full-time staffing and other things. But this kind of brings me to kind of a very specific question. So what do American law firms misunderstand about offshore teams?
It's very misunderstood that we're going to have like an accent that no one can understand. So everyone thinks Comcast or whatever telephone company has outsourced to various other countries in the world. They also may have a misunderstanding of privacy, security breaches, things of this nature, whereby we're humans as well. We look at the business as a business, and we know that if we should ever slip up, that's a stream of income off our plate, you know? So we take interest in that. So I do know that that is a major concern. Like, is this guy gonna take my client somewhere else? Is this person gonna leak my information, my documents? Am I gonna get a cyber attack? Are they gonna be like not able to properly communicate with my clients? Or a main one is, well, we're from the southern United States, and if they hear an accent, you're not gonna want to work with them because of the jobs, keeping jobs at home. But one thing I've learned is if you're helping people, they don't care what your accent sounds like. They're getting the help that they need.
So that brings me to what makes a remote team fail. Let's say that somebody hires attorney assistant. What are consistencies we see where the firm doesn't work with attorney assistant or with any offshore team or with any staffing company? What are consistencies you think that make a remote team fail?
So consistencies that make a remote team fail is thinking that you can just throw the work on the team and not tell them what to do. And that's not just only a remote team, that is a team back home. If you do not have a roadmap, if you do not have a game plan, I mean, look at the NFL team. Going to the Super Bowl, you can't just say, okay, you're a quarterback, you're a wide receiver, just do what quarterbacks do. Just do what wide receivers do. No, you have to have a strategic game plan. This is where you're going to be positioned on the pitch. When X person has the ball, you move in X direction. This is the game playing. So if you do not have a game plan for your team, whether offshore or at home, it's going to fail. And I've consistently see law firms just be like, okay, I have a VA, just go do whatever you do. Do what you're supposed to do. But it's not it's not in the best interest of the firm, and it's not proper management if you don't know what you're going to do. You can't just
Training documents.
yeah, you have to train. You need training documents. You need to let them know, how do you like things done? How do you want your customers to be approached? Your virtual assistant is a part of your brand. So they need to know what your brand is. They need to know how to approach your clients. They need to know what you're looking for in cases that you want to take on. You can't put them on the phone day one and say, okay, answer the calls and book them for me, because you might get clients that, they're not even in the practice area. You need to say, hey, you know what? I'm dealing with personal injury. If someone slipped and fell and it was at X location or X type of company, call me immediately. If it was an accident and it was a company truck involved, call me immediately. If it's you just got to give people a direction to move in. And the more detailed it is, the more detailed results you will get. the more vague it is, the more vague results you will get. So just because we're offshore and we have some previous knowledge in what you do, it doesn't mean that we completely know what you are expecting. So putting your expectations, saying what actually is it that you want, and knowing what you want. Because some people say, hey, I want a VA, but I want them to do social media and marketing. And that's very wide. Like one person cannot do your whole marketing, especially if you're branching out. Another thing I see is companies are just not marketing. If you don't run ads, if you don't have Google LSAs, who's going to be contacting your business? Now your very skilled virtual assistant is sitting there with a lot of downtime. So either you make a rainy day list for downtimes, or you ramp up your marketing so that they have calls to answer and people to put at on your calendar.
All right, so let's talk a little about the future. All right, so where do you see the Belize operation being in 5 years?
Um, Wow. The Belize operation in 5 years, I see us expanding. As of today, I just got confirmation that we are 51 employees today. In 5 years,
And then
in office.
what about out of office?
Out of office, I don't have a number,
I
but I
believe it's
know
around
in the
50 as well. So that would be about 101 total Belizeans.
so I know in office is 51. If I can 5x that in 5 years, that would be amazing. And I think 5xing is a bit on the low side because I wanted 2x within the coming year. So by 2x, I'd have 100, but I'd like to essentially add 50 people a year over the next 5 years. And that would give 250 families a source of income and not just a minimum wage source of income. That would give them a source of income that allows them to be able to properly care for their household.
So,
I
that's an important thing to touch on. So, you know, there is an arbitrage of just cost of living in different places around the world. In the Philippines, you might be able to spend $1,000 and you can get an acre in a city. In Abdel's hometown, which, right now, right around San Ignacio City, you can buy 100 acres for $100,000. From a actual products perspective, the Philippines, the average pay a day there, and you can live on, is $8 a day. It's definitely more in Belize, but where we put our people, even when they are just starting with us, it's in a fair and growing income bracket. Is that a fair statement?
Yes. I have people who are already paying income tax because they got their annual raise and they're like, why does the government have to take this money from me? Well, just look at it this way. You're now successful enough to be contributing to the tax base of the economy.
So, I think that there is just such talented people down in Belize, and I'm so grateful that I get to work with people like you on this project. And, if you ever want to meet Abdel, he comes to conferences and stuff with me. It's a great time. So maybe you'll see him around at a conference over the next year or so. But anything else you want to leave our audience with that you think could be helpful for them?
Yes. There are two things I want to leave the audience with. And it's from Jim Rohn, and I'm a huge Jim Rohn fan. If you will change, everything will change for you. So if you will change, everything will change for you. And the next one is to wish for the wisdom to set a better sail. The wind will always be rough. Don't ask for calmer winds, ask for the wisdom to set a better sail. And by doing this, you'll be able to overcome most, if not all, of the obstacles that you face. And that's both professional and personal.
Appreciate it, buddy. Thanks for taking the time. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of The Growth Code, and we'll catch you next time.